As we all know right now, Texas and Oklahoma are looking to officially join the SEC conference and leave the Big 12 behind. This has been a bombshell and just adds another layer to what's already been a crazy college football offseason. At first, you had the recruiting periods that were finally lifted, you had all the NIL stuff, and there were many more events, but the fact that conference realignment is coming up right now is going to be the biggest and most premier story of this college football offseason. Anywhere you look on social media, it is being talked about right now, and while most people would agree that Oklahoma can hang toe-to-toe with any team in the SEC, Texas, on the other hand, I don't know. There's a lot of talk that this would be a stupid move for Texas, and in today's video, I want to weigh in my opinion on that, my opinion on all this conference realignment stuff, and I'm just going to sort of talk about everything that is going on. But right before we get into that, apparently nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and we need to do better than that. You're not going to want to miss out on all the college football content I have in the next few weeks and during the season, and plus I would really appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button as it helps out so much. And now, without further ado, let's get started and talk about how the college football world is upside down right now. So as the title of this video states, I think it's a pretty dumb decision for Texas to move to the SEC for a couple of reasons. While it will add more money and more exposure to the program, Texas is already struggling as is. They're definitely the second, or if not the biggest brand in the Big 12, but in the last 11 years, they've only really had one spectacular year, and that's when they beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl and had 4 losses. The Longhorns used to be one of the premier programs in the country. All the top kids in the state of Texas wanted to play there, and they are continually ranked in the top 10, but as of the last few years, it just hasn't really been the case. You can blame that on the coaching, or you can blame it on the shift in college football. The Charlie Strong hire was good on paper, but it was an absolute disaster when it was all said and done, and when they hired Tom Herman to be the next head coach, many people expected a lot of change. Herman was a huge name at Ohio State, and built a ton of momentum at Houston before he decided to take the Texas job. Some say it is karma because he turned his back on Houston, but in my opinion, the reason why Herman struggled so much was because of the change in college football. Yes, he had some questionable in-game coaching, lost some dumb games, and for some reason could never bury the hatchet for any team in a game, but Herman recruited pretty solidly, had all the resources in the world, and had a pretty decent coaching staff around him. I think one of the problems in the Tom Herman era was the quarterback position. Sam Ehlinger has one of the most inspiring stories you'll ever hear, was a fighter and a good player, but I never thought he had that element to actually bring Texas back to where they needed to be. Before that, they could never get a solid quarterback, as they had guys like Ty Swoops, Shane Buechele, Gerard Hurd, David Ash, and Case McCoy, and I could go on for hours about that, but when's the last time they truly had an elite quarterback? There have been so many good quarterbacks to come out of the state of Texas over the past few years, and finally I thought they were to get that guy in Quinn Ewers, but as we pretty much all know by now, Ewers decided to decommit from Texas and flip to Ohio State, and that shows that the game has been changing. I have no doubt in my mind that the top players in the state of Texas still hold the Longhorns program in high regards and want it to be good, but they no longer see it as a way for them to see a ton of success or get to the NFL, and that is a major problem, and how does shifting to the SEC change that? Instead of getting guaranteed games against Kansas State, West Virginia, Baylor, and Texas Tech and those schools, now the worst team you're probably going to be playing against is a team like Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Kentucky, or Tennessee. All of those schools recruit better and have more resources than those teams in the Big 12, and that also fails to mention that you have to play the LSU, Auburns, Alabama, Texas A&Ms, Georgia, Florida, Missouri, and Oklahomas of the world still. Texas struggled tremendously to win a ton of big games over the last few years, almost lost at home to Kansas, and lost back-to-back years to Maryland. What makes you think going over to the SEC is going to make that any easier? A few seconds ago, I talked about how they're going to play the Tennessee, Ole Misses, and Mississippi States of the world, and all those programs are doing pretty well. Lane Kiffin has Ole Miss building up, Mike Leach is always going to be a tough out at Mississippi State, Mark Stoops is doing tremendous at Kentucky, Shane Beamer is an up-and-coming hire at South Carolina, Clark Lee's going to make Vanderbilt a little bit tougher than they have been, and Elijah Drinkwitz is really starting to do well at Missouri. In the Big 12, you have some teams that are really struggling right now, like Kansas is pretty much dead, Dave Aranda's in over his head at Baylor, Matt Wells is on the clock at Texas Tech, Neil Brown has failed to take that next step at West Virginia, and Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State is starting to lose a little steam in my opinion, while Matt Campbell is doing absolutely tremendous at Iowa State. Outside of them in Oklahoma, there's no reason why Texas should not be that second best team in the conference every year, but if you push them over to the SEC, I don't even know where I would put them. There's no way I have them over Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, Auburn, Georgia, or even Florida, and that right there is already 6. And with some of these other programs on the rise, I see no way that Texas is better than them right now. Another reason I don't want to see Texas get moved to the SEC is because I don't think they deserve to just get out of the mess that they made. Had the stupid Longhorn network not have been made, the Big 12 could have had a better TV network, and it could have saved the whole thing. The Big 12 is also to blame, as they have been pretty much idiotic over the last 10 years and have shot themselves in the foot many times. Back in the day, there was a rumor that BYU would join, but they unanimously voted that one down. But there were so many opportunities for them to build up that conference. 10 teams was fine, but they didn't have a conference championship for quite a while, and since then, the same school has won it every year. There's no reason why Houston should not be in the Big 12, as they've been a good football program, have the resources, are a tremendous basketball program, and are solid at baseball as well. If you look at a school like UCF, they're one of the largest universities in the country, have seen success, have a ton of talent at their disposal in the state of Florida, and it's an entire new TV market. Cincinnati's been a good program for the last 20 years, despite all the different coaches they've had. They're a college football playoff contender this year, and they're in the Ohio market. SMU is an old program with a ton of tradition and a ton of rivalries, and in the last few years, they've even started to build more momentum and become a better team. Memphis has a ton of basketball tradition, has been really good at football over the last few years, and once again moves that TV market even more to the west. A school like Boise State has their iconic blue turf. They've been good every single year pretty much. They are a brand, and it expands the TV to the West Coast. There are definitely a couple other schools I could mention, but in my opinion, those are the main schools that the Big 12 should have targeted. While every other conference was growing, they were shrinking and failing to expand into new markets. While some people will say that geography is an issue, I don't see how flying from Texas to West Virginia is any different from flying to Texas to Florida. The whole geography thing is stupid, and the Big 12 has really dropped the ball. On the other hand, I need to talk about how this could benefit Texas, as now that they get to the SEC, the recruiting will likely go up a little bit more. All those kids from the state of Texas will get to play on big nationally televised games against big-time opponents. They'll probably have a better chance of getting to the playoff because the SEC conference will be seen as more premier and better than anyone else. They'll be getting more money because of all the big games they are in. And with Steve Sarkisian at the helm, things could change and Texas could finally put it all together. I'm not quite sure what is going to happen, as basically the entire college football world has been flipped upside down, as there's been talks of the SEC going to a pod system, talks that Iowa State and Kansas could go over to the Big 10, that TCU is already talking to the Pac-12, and where the heck does this leave all the other schools? I'm not quite sure, and maybe the American becomes a new Power 5, maybe the ACC grabs a couple people, or maybe the SEC votes against Texas coming in. I really have no clue what is going to happen. But on paper, this just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for Texas, outside of the fact that it'll just give them a little bit more money. What do you guys think, though? What do you think of all this conference realignment? What is going to happen? Is this good or bad for Texas? Is this good or bad for Oklahoma? And just what is your opinion on everything that is going on in this madness right now? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section. Hit that like button if you want to support today's video. Subscribe if you are new and love college football content. And check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video about Texas's quarterback battle for 2021. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.